Turn the lights on for the Tyler Bright and Early podcast, PBJ Productions, official flagship podcast for all things college football centered. A lot to dig into here today. We're going to talk about James Franklin, the new head ball coach of the Virginia Tech Hokies. We'll talk about Lane Kiffin, flirting with some other schools, the Gators, the Tigers, trying to be the center of attention, the star. Pretty fitting for it. We're talking about some other schools going on in the landscape of college football. We're talking about the conference title race. A lot of these title races still up for grabs in pretty much all of the conferences. So we'll touch on that, and we'll also get a preview of this next week. But make sure to engage with us. Follow us on our social platforms. We're on TikTok, Instagram, X. You can watch and listen to full episodes on Spotify and YouTube. Why wouldn't you want to tune in? Why wouldn't you want to stay up to date with all things bright and early? Brighten up your day. Let's go. All right, let's get the recap of this past week. Some pretty good games, I would say, especially in the SEC. But before we go to the SEC, Notre Dame did their business against Pitt, 37-15, thumping over the Panthers. I still think Pitt's pretty good, though. South Carolina, Texas A&M. After the Gamecocks were up 30-3, the largest comeback in Texas A&M history, came out with the win 31-30. Marcel Reed was a different quarterback in those halves. Was pretty much awful, trash in the first half. Comes out and throws for like over 300 yards. Couple tutties. You'll take that. You'll take that all day. You'll take that all day. Yeah, with a total of 439 yards, 3 touchdowns, but did have 2 interceptions. But hey, all that matters is that you get the win at the end of the day. And Lenore Sellers, is he staying at South Carolina after this year? You know, a lot of people were saying before the season started, he's a Heisman contender. You know, he's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. I'm not seeing it. I think he's going to be back for another year of school. It's just a matter of is going to be at South Carolina. Who knows? Who knows, guys? Who knows? I think there is a good shot that he's transferring. I do legitimately think that. Just like, why would you stay? Unless you could be comfortable with Shane Beamer and what the culture that he's producing, especially with Virginia Tech all locked up now with James Franklin, you can assure yourself that Shane Beamer's not going to Blacksburg. So got that, but it's not looking good for South Carolina after they were expected to be contenders, but is what it is. Miami takes care of business against NC State. Virginia, a dominating win over Duke, even though it doesn't seem like that with a 34-17 score in favor of the Cavaliers. They own that. They own that game. They own the game from start to finish. Iowa in a close game against USC, but they didn't come out on top. The Trojans win 26-21. Georgia Tech struggling with Boston College. I thought Boston College was going to win that game. I was kind of listening on the radio how that fourth quarter was going a little bit. Boston College kept scoring and responding, but Georgia Tech still in the driver's seat. Oklahoma and Alabama. Oklahoma, for the second year in a row, knocks off the Crimson Tide 23-21. Oklahoma's going to make the playoff, guys. I think they pretty much solidified their spot with that win against the Crimson Tide. So now what's next for Alabama? What is next? And then Texas and Georgia. I wouldn't even say Arch Manning played a really bad game. Only 10 points in that game against the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs put up 35. I think his receivers let him down. There was a lot of passes that they just weren't doing much for him. And I mean, if your receivers aren't catching the balls and not making the plays that they need to, what can you do at that point? There's only so much you can do. So it's a tough spot to put yourself in. Let me just dive into some of his stats that he has right here, or had this past Saturday. 27 for 43, 251 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Obviously, nothing spectacular. But when Gunnar Stockton goes 24 for 29, 229 yards, 4 tutties, only 1 pick. Yeah, Gunnar Stockton just played better when he needed to most. And yeah, that's the SEC for you. It just means more. But that's what I got for the recap of last week. Now let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about James Franklin. Virginia Tech, this whole hiring process, the coaching process of hiring James Franklin to come on board in Blacksburg, A+. Perfect. You could not have done a better job. It wasn't dragged out for weeks and weeks on end. You got the business done. You're like, okay, we know who our guy is, James Franklin. We want him. And yeah, we still got 2 weeks left of the regular season. But guess what? Our coach got fired early in the year. We don't care. We want to make a change, and we want this guy. And they got him. Credit to Virginia Tech and getting James Franklin on board. And I think it's a perfect fit because he knows that region so well. He is such a great recruiter in the Mid-Atlantic region. And I just think it just makes sense, and especially in the ACC. He's going to thrive in the ACC, guys. Like, he should, especially with the ACC. You know, everyone's beating up on each other, even though you have the narrative that James Franklin can't win big games, or maybe he just can't win against big teams in big games. You know, that seems counterintuitive. But anyway, I think you get the picture that I'm trying to paint here. Maybe he'll have a better path to the college football playoff here at Virginia Tech. I certainly think so. And they're willing to pony up the money compared to some other programs. There's some higher profile schools that aren't really putting their money where their mouth is. They're not really selling it to the boosters or to the fan base that like, hey, we're coming to play. Virginia Tech, they're coming to play. And I also liked what he said in his introductory press conference, kind of taking credit or giving a shout out to the old head coach, Brent Pry. Obviously, Brent Pry was an assistant at Penn State under James Franklin, was the defensive coordinator for a few years. And I think for James Franklin, it's pretty telling that he took this job after taking a job that was previously his former assistant. He's taken right now, so he knows the program in and out. If anyone's going to tell him the truth, it's Brent Pry. So if it was a dumpster fire, he wouldn't have taken the job. Brent Pry, I'm assuming they have a great relationship. Like, he's going to tell it what it is at Virginia Tech. And even though he didn't quite get it to the levels that they wanted to at Virginia Tech, you got to remember Frank Beamer was pumping out 10-win seasons like it was nothing in the ACC when they joined in like the early 2000s. He was making it easy. He was making it look easy. And Virginia Tech hasn't had that much success. Of course, they made it like 1 year under Justin Fuente, but then he like ravaged that program. At the end of the day, it's a great hire. And I think give it a couple years, let James Franklin accumulate talent. He was a successful head coach when he was at Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt wasn't really poning up the money that Virginia Tech is now, that's for sure. And even when he was a coordinator at Maryland, he's familiar. He's just familiar with the area, and I think it's a great fit. At the end of the day, I think it's a great fit, and I think more often than not, you're going to see them compete for the top of the ACC. So that's what I got on James Franklin. Now next, Lane Kiffin. After beating the Gators, it was a competitive game, kind of close battle between Florida and Ole Miss, but Ole Miss came out on top, was the better team, especially late in the fourth quarter. But the next day, family exploring their options, going to Gainesville, Baton Rouge over the weekend, and I don't blame them. Seek all your options as you can. There was purported earlier in the week that Ole Miss gave him an ultimatum. That was proven to be false, or at least Lane Kiffin says that post was completely made up, completely false. So I'm not going to really touch on that a little bit, but I am going to touch a little bit on the situation is how much time is Ole Miss going to give Lane Kiffin to make a decision. Reportedly there is an extension on the table that he hasn't signed yet, and and I don't blame him. He doesn't need to sign it right now. He has all the leverage pretty much in this situation. He has the best Ole Miss. This is the best Ole Miss team that they've had in years. Like, they're potentially competing for an SEC championship. They're competing for a college football spot in the college football playoff. And after beating Florida, their chances look really good. They look really good. Now, the question is, if he doesn't sign the extension, let's just say that they don't make the SEC championship and then they make the college football playoff. At what point do you sign the extension? Because if you're in the college football playoff, that makes it a little bit longer for these schools like Florida and LSU to wait on you to try to pounce on the opportunity. If he didn't make the playoff, then the season's over. Then you can pounce him whenever they want because players and coaches don't really care at that point, especially at a program like Ole Miss in the SEC. But with him in the playoff, he's going to be focused on his team. So what does that mean? How does that look? Well, eventually, if you don't sign that, basically what I'm trying to get at is, do you think he would coach the playoff game if he doesn't sign the extension? People would say, absolutely, he's going to coach in that playoff game. I don't know, though. There is an argument to be made that if Ole Miss makes the playoff and he doesn't sign that extension, that people may say that he's distracted, that he's not focused at the task at hand. I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate and try to advocate for that point on the other side. Kind of like a rebuttal, if you will. It could potentially happen, and maybe you have Golding be the interim head coach in that situation. But at this point right now, Ole Miss is a better program than those other two programs right now. I mean, Florida has a losing record. LSU is a mess. Although we think the ceilings are higher at those programs, such as Florida and LSU, Ole Miss right now is the better program now. And especially if you do go to a Florida and LSU, how many years is it going to take to kind of get onto the same platform of what Ole Miss is right now? Maybe it's quick, maybe it's a long haul, I don't know. It's all hypotheticals here. But it's something to think about, especially if he is entertaining all his options. Does he want to leave? Is he happy where he is? And it certainly looks like he is. He's certainly content with Oxford. It's just more so, does he want to take another job? Only Lane Kiffin knows that, and his insiders and his family, possibly. But got to see all the options that you can, right? But I think Lane Kiffin loves the attention. He loves people talking about him on Twitter. You know, he's talking, he's egging it up, he's marketing himself, he's boosting the profile. I love Lane Kiffin. I love the character that he is. I think it's great for college football. He is the Steve Spurrier of the modern era. He is, certainly indeed. Now we'll talk about the college football playoff. And I've kind of brought this up previously before. What would be your criteria of ranking teams? Do you value strength of schedule, strength of record, strength of opponent? Do you favor the old BCS format? Do you wish that the computers did all the rankings? I would argue that a BCS format would be better in this 12-team college football playoff. The crazy thing is about the college football playoff is that everyone is going to argue with everything. No one's going to be happy because you're going to have three lost teams that'll be like, oh, we should have been in the playoff. Like Louisville potentially, like they're a 3-loss team, but they also have 2 overtime losses and one 1-point loss a 1-point loss to Clemson, 2 overtime losses and a 1-point loss to Clemson, but they're undefeated on the road so far. It's tough. It's tough. You're not going to please anyone, you're not going to please everyone, I should say. But just something to think about. Let me know in the comments below what you think. But as far as the conference title races in these conferences, guys, they're all so close together, especially the AAC, the group of 6, what many people are expecting to be the group of 6 representative in the college football playoff. You got Navy at 6-1. I'm just going to say the conference rankings. Navy at 6-1, Tulane at 5-1, North Texas at 5-1, East Carolina at 5-1, and South Florida's just outside the picture at 4-2. So that is 4 teams, or 5 teams if you count South Florida. In the ACC, you got 4 teams. You got Georgia Tech, Virginia, Pitt, and SMU. But even Miami is still in there. So I guess you could say 5 teams there as well. In the Big 12, you got Texas Tech, BYU, and then you have 4 teams that are at 5-2. Big 12 is still in contention. In the Big 10, that one's a little bit more cut and dry. But also maybe not, because you got Indiana, who's 8-0 in conference play. Ohio State, who's 7-0 in conference play. But then you have USC, Oregon, and Michigan at 6-1. Michigan, who was struggling with Northwestern over in Chicago at Wrigley Field. Even though there was probably more Michigan fans because Chicago's a hotbed for Michigan U of M alums. Conference USA, that's 6-0 Jack State, 6-1 Western Kentucky, 5-1 Kennesaw State, and then 5-1 Missouri State. I'm not sure if Missouri State can make the conference title game. I'm not sure if they're kind of with that transition from the FCS to the FBS. Either way, I don't think they'll ultimately get there, although credit to them, they're on a 5-game winning streak. The MAC, you have like 6 teams that are in contention, though it looks like Western Michigan is the front runner. They are the only team with 1 loss in conference play. But then you got Ohio, Central Michigan, Toledo, Buffalo, Miami of Ohio, all in contention there. And of course, weekday action kind of throws things all through a loop. Jeez, like it's just madness. You got San Diego State at 5-1, 4-2, Fresno State, Boise State at 4-2, New Mexico at 4-2, UNLV at 4-2, and Hawaii at 4-2. And then the SEC, 7-0, Texas A&M, 7-1 Georgia, a 6-1 Ole Miss, 6-1 Alabama, and I think you can pretty much close it after that because I think 4-2 and 4-2 Oklahoma, Texas and Oklahoma, that is. And then you also throw in Vanderbilt there too. I don't think any of those teams are going to make the SEC title game, but and then you have the Sun Belt, which do they still have divisions in the Sun Belt? I guess so. But it will look like James Madison's probably coming out of the Sun Belt. But who knows, man? Who knows? But that just kind of shows the parity right now in college football. I mean, I think it's kind of expected, especially with the transfer portal, all these rule changes, and now with the expanded playoff. This is kind of expected now. You're not just going to see the days where you have multiple teams that go undefeated and then make it like the GoDaddy Bowl. Not the case anymore. Just isn't. But it's great. It feels like a lot of the teams are kind of more on a level playing field, and then there's no team that is just so much dominant than everyone else. You can maybe argue that Ohio State is the most dominant team in college football, but I don't think anyone's like a legendary team. Now, maybe if Ohio State wins the title, we can kind of put them in that platform. We can kind of put them in that regard because I think it's deserving if you win back to back, especially in this era. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand with that. Let's take a look at some of the games coming up this week. Week 13 of the college football season. We got, of course, the SEC, a lot of these SEC cupcake games. So you got Texas A&M taking on Stanford. Have fun. Oklahoma and Missouri. Oh, by the way, Texas A&M is winning the game. Just in case you didn't know. Missouri and Oklahoma. Could this be a trap game for Oklahoma? I think it could. I think at this point, Missouri is kind of just, with Bo Pribula hurt, I don't think they're going to beat Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's a more well-rounded team. And I feel like they just kind of lost it after that. I feel like, we don't have Bo Pribula and we're not going to be as good. And Oklahoma just beat Alabama, guys. Like, Oklahoma's good. Although they've had their moments from time to time. Going with the Sooners. Miami versus Virginia Tech. Maybe Virginia Tech's a little bit motivated, maybe now that James Franklin's the new head ball coach now, and maybe he can get some pointers, talking over, see if they can get anything against Miami. But I think Miami will be just fine. They'll get the win over the Hokies. Ohio State and Rutgers, that will be a blowout, and the Buckeyes will win. Same thing with Georgia and Charlotte. Alabama, Eastern Illinois. SEC Cupcake Week, guys. SEC Cupcake Week. Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Although Kentucky's been doing really well these past couple of weeks. All they need is one win, and they will be bowl eligible. They need to get it against Vanderbilt or Louisville. Still got Vandy. Notre Dame and Syracuse. Notre Dame will blow the doors off Syracuse. USC and Oregon. That's going to be a great matchup. Maybe USC can upset Oregon. I wouldn't put it past them. I would not put it past them. You know what? And the more I keep saying that, the more I'm going to pick them. So guess what? I'm picking USC to knock off the Ducks. Yeah, we're going to have a little bit of chaos in the Big Ten. A little bit of chaos. I feel like there hasn't been much chaos in the Big Ten. But it depends on how you interpret chaos, I guess. But got the Trojans. Fight on. Arkansas and Texas. I got Texas. They'll be all right against an Arkansas team that is just all over the place with Bobby Petrino. At this point, I know I might have said it earlier that it looked like Bobby Petrino was going to be the next head coach. I don't no longer think that anymore. They keep losing these like one scores or even 1 point in some cases scores. So yeah, hook 'em. Then you got Kansas State and Utah. I got Utah. I got the Utes. I think Michigan will be just fine against Maryland in their next game. Who knows what's going to happen with Mike Locksley in his future. Then we got Illinois against Wisconsin. I think Illinois will come out with the W. Tennessee versus Florida. Urban Meyer is going to be recognized at this game. Of course, super late in the schedule. I feel like it should be earlier in the season, like the 4th week of the season, or how it usually is. But that's the new landscape of college football. You got to break all these traditions because teams want to compete for national titles and want to flip things on its head. So Florida versus Tennessee. I kind of want to pick Florida, but I don't know. I feel like this team is on quit watch, but they played so good against Ole Miss. Not a game that a lot of people are probably going to be looking at. It is 7:30 though. kind of going back and forth. I think I'll roll Tennessee. I think I just got to go with Tennessee. I think Florida is just, I think they're just out at this point. BYU and Cincinnati. That's a good matchup. I think BYU was a little bit of imposter syndrome, but I do think they're better than Cincinnati, and I don't think Scott Satterfield is consistent enough. So I'm going to go with BYU over the Bearcats. Lastly, Arizona State, Colorado. I think Arizona State will be just fine against Colorado. I think this might be the last year for Deion. I'm serious. I think it might be the last year based on his health concerns, and there's a very good chance the Cleveland Browns might fire Stefanski and might hire Deion Sanders because it's the Cleveland Browns, and who knows what they're going to do. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Tyler Bright and Early podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Bright. Thanks for tuning in. PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football center.